So good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. Today I have a very special guest. I have Gil Castillo and Derek Joyce of Hyundai Motor Company. And today we're going to be talking about hydrogen alternative powertrain technology, including the Nexo SUV and the future of hydrogen technology, but also including electrics and plug-ins and hybrids and everything great that you guys are working on, because you are embracing all technologies. So please tell us everything that you all are working on.
I certainly will. Thank you, first of all, for having us, Wendy. Much appreciated. And giving us this opportunity to talk about Hyundai and all the good things that we're doing and helping, the whole country transition towards electrification. So like you just mentioned, we offer a full complement of different electrified vehicles, from your hybrid electric to your plug-in hybrid to battery electric and like you just mentioned, fuel cell electric vehicles. So here in California, we offer the Nexo, which is a subcompact SUV that offers up to 380-mile range and has been available since 2018, I believe. So it's a great little car that gets a lot of good fanfare from its owners and such. In addition to that, later this year, we're introducing what we call the new Ioniq 5, which is our first dedicated EV. And that one is also kind of Tucson, or I should say small subcompact SUV sized. So in some ways, these two vehicles kind of operate in the same space, if you will, from a size perspective, but they're tailored to two different sides of the market, right? And the reason for that is simply that we know that consumers, they have different needs, they live in different places, they have different preferences, right? So for some people, they want to be able to charge at home and they love that convenience. For others, they maybe don't have a place to charge at home, they rent, they park on the street, and so that's not an option to them. But refueling at a gas station or a fuel station, 5 minutes and such, that makes more sense for them. And so that's why we offer these two solutions.
I do love the fact that you offer the energy diversification aspect, because it depends on each individual owner. Some, as you said, some people cannot put in an electric charger and they don't mind going to the gas station. I know people that actually will go to an electric plug-in and they'll sit there for, half hour, 40 minutes waiting to charge, which isn't for everybody. Some people love it. There's a social aspect. Some people hate it. So you are offering all forms. And when you say dedicated electric, we're meaning not a hybrid, but pure electric plug-in, correct?
Oh, yeah. When I say dedicated, I mean the vehicle itself. So up to now, we've offered the Kona electric and the Ioniq electric. But the Kona electric is based off a platform that also sells a gasoline-powered vehicle, right?
Okay.
The Ioniq 5, we call it a dedicated battery electric because that platform is designed only for battery electric. And so you can optimize, the packaging, the efficiency and such. So it's our first dedicated electric vehicle, offers up to 300-mile range, and we're really excited about it.
That's huge for electric to have a 300-mile range.
We're entering like the next generation of vehicles, right? We had the first generation, like I said, the Kona electric, the Ioniq, and some of our competitors like the Leaf, etc. Limited range, smaller size, but now we're entering the next phase where now the vehicles are offering much better range. They're bigger in size. A lot more people, I think, are going to find them that they can live with them, right? And I think it's going to open a lot of doors. We're still a couple of generations away from where we can move away from gasoline entirely. Yeah. But it's a transition, and each step is very important.
I like the fact you mentioned transition, because a lot of people forget that when gasoline-powered cars first came out, very dangerous. And they got about, I think, 8 miles to the gallon is what I read up on for some of the first vehicles. So when people say, oh, electric cars only go so far, or hydrogen cars only go so far, and this is inconvenient, everything takes time to phase into it. And we just have to adapt, and we have to get used to things. And the technology is coming very quickly. I mean, we think about the adaptation we've had only in the past 5 years alone. It's gigantic. And going back to the hybrid, 380-mile range, I think is what you said?
Oh, for the fuel cell, yeah, 380-mile range.
That's incredible. I mean, that's huge for someone who wants to do a road trip and not have to worry about running out of energy. What about infrastructure? Like, where do people go to get their cars charged? Because I know that we don't have a whole lot of those, and converting the gas stations will take time. So do you have any insight on the progress of that?
Yeah, so right now there's, I think, around 47, 48 retail stations here in California. They're mostly, in the LA area, Orange County, and then the Bay Area, a couple in Sacramento. There's one in San Diego. There's some connector stations to make sure people can drive between big cities. Some destination stations like in Santa Barbara, et cetera. And then right now, the state of California has already funded next round of stations, which hopefully would add like another 40 stations. The ultimate goal is to have around 200 stations before 2025. And then beyond that, right, long term, it's to have upwards of 1,000 stations by 2030. So yeah, the plans are there, right? And we have every faith that we will see that transition and an acceleration of the stations. It's one of those things that we could probably sell more vehicles. There could be a lot more vehicles if there were more stations. And so it's just the stations trying to keep up with vehicle sales. But then ultimately the goal is, we are here in California, but we don't want this just to be a California only solution, really. It has to be a US solution. And so we're working with our partners, other OEMs and such, and other agencies to go to the Northeast, go to the Northwest as well. We can envision call it a hydrogen corridor between California, Oregon, Washington, and even Canada up to Vancouver.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I know, getting the gas station. I know when we had a previous conversation with Keith Malone, he talked about gas stations will be converting from petroleum to hydrogen. Are people like ExxonMobil starting to embrace that, or are we seeing a whole new industry of gas companies that are going to pop up?
I think it's going to be a mix of all the above. Like you said, it wasn't that long ago where I think the typical or traditional energy companies, big oil, didn't necessarily see the benefit of going into hydrogen. But now, like you just said, everything's happening so quickly. I mean, we're so amazed too at how quickly this transitioning is occurring. And I think everyone's seeing the writing on the wall, and that's that, it's not going to be that far off into the future where you're not going to be able to sell a gasoline, at least not in the volumes that you're accustomed to. And so these stations have to make that switch. Otherwise, I mean, they're just going to lose a customer base. And I think now that we're seeing the energy companies certainly much more interested than they were even a couple of years ago, that only helps us, right? In terms of, great, now we've got a place where we can install more stations, and that more stations will lead to more sales. And, it's a great snowball effect.
Absolutely. I think I read today that Chevron was looking into hydrogen, converting over to hydrogen. I mean, Shell has always been kind of in the forefront of renewable energy.
Right. Absolutely. They've got a couple of stations already. They're building, I think, upwards of 50 stations in the near future. So yeah, Shell's been very involved. Wow.
That's hugely impressive. I mean, not surprised. I know people that work there, and they've been all in the renewable energy for many years, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not new to them. Just talking, electric and hydrogen and the plugins, and you guys have a diverse range. What's the production going to be? Are you going to do like a 50-50, do you think? Or do you see one more favorable over the other?
The thing about forecasts is, you're always going to be wrong, right? We have forecasts, but
that's true.
At least, generally speaking, I think it's very obvious that right now battery electrics have a huge advantage, right, over fuel cell, just based on the volumes that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And battery electrics also make a lot more sense when you're talking about smaller vehicles, when you're talking about certain driving distances and such. So when we're talking light duty, I certainly do think that we're going to see a majority of battery electric, and then some more fuel cell, but it'll probably be majority battery electric. Now, once you start talking much bigger vehicles, and you start going into the more medium duty and heavy duty space, then I think that switches over, where fuel cell makes a lot more sense because of the range, the energy density, things like that. Especially when you're talking long haul, then fuel cell makes more sense. And then even beyond that, Hyundai actually is a pretty big company globally. I mean, in the US, we just think of Hyundai cars, but globally, they're involved in all sorts of stuff, trains and ships and this and that. And so there's also a lot of activity in fuel cell for like shipping, for trains. We're also involved in urban air mobility, and that would make a lot more sense once that goes electric to go fuel cell, again, because of energy density and such versus battery. So, when you're talking the whole ecosystem, then you could see hydrogen being a fairly big player, maybe bigger than battery electric. But when you're talking just consumer products, light duty, then I think it's more evenly split with maybe a little bit more battery electric.
I'm glad you mentioned the transportation issue, because most people, when they think long haul transport, hydrogen does come to mind. at the beginning, just because of the range. But I didn't realize that you guys were also involved in the train industry. And more and more, I'm personally a huge fan of trains. I think they're amazing. I think we need more of them. We need faster rails for just not only transporting goods and merchandise, but people.
Yeah,
I would much rather sit on a train, kick back and read a book than get in a car and battle the 405.
Oh, especially like if you're going to Las Vegas from LA, I'd love to have a electric train, right?
I would be on that in a second. I did that drive once. I'm a geologist by degree, so I'm like, I got to see the rocks. It was great. Never want to do it again. Yeah. One and done was fine with me. So I'm not going to talk about trains. I don't want to do that to you. But one of the things, just talking to like the general public, people who may have concerns about hydrogen, what are a couple things you can tell them about the safety, efficiency, effectiveness of not just long, haul transit, but for the smaller sedan cars?
So the problem is, or not really the problem, but the concern is battery electrics are very easy to understand. Everyone owns a cell phone, everyone charges a battery. And so you kind of make that connection. Even though, you have battery problems, you hear about batteries exploding and blah, blah, blah. But somehow we've gone beyond that for the most part in battery side. Problem with hydrogen is it's not familiar. You always hear about some big event in the past, and that, somehow that always resonates with people. But in reality, hydrogen powered vehicles are designed to meet the same safety standards as any regular car, gasoline or battery electric, right? And so they're designed so that they're tanks on board or carbon fiber wrapped. I've heard Keith say they're like the safest place you can be on a car.
Yeah, he did say that. Yeah.
And then if there is an accident, right, they're designed to vent the hydrogen at a controlled rate. So rather than seeing an explosion, you'll see like a flame coming out of it, right? But it's a controlled flame. Yep. Whereas if you get a gasoline tank to explode, then obviously that's hardly controlled, right? So anyway, they're just as safe, if not safer. And then when you're refueling, the hydrogen's lighter than gas. And so instead of pooling on the ground where it can collect, it'll vent into the atmosphere, right? So
very true.
We talk about, if you were 100 years ago, right, and we already had hydrogen cars, but now we were introducing this thing called gasoline. It's toxic. You're going to store it underground where it might leak, contaminate. Right. It'll pool and it'll catch fire. People would not be really that accepting of gasoline, because of that.
Doesn't sound good. Let's see. It's a known carcinogen. It catches on fire. It contaminates land and groundwater and poisons it. No, I don't think it would really be a hard sell.
But it's because we're used to that now, and standards and have been in place for a long time and such. And the same is true of hydrogen. It's just once people become familiar with it and the process of fueling and this and that, then you realize, there's no different. If anything, it's safer.
I brought up on that previous interview with Keith. My first intro to hydrogen cars was watching Scientific American with Alan Alda back in the 80s. So we're going back in time here. And what I loved about it was, one, the off gas. Alan Alda said it smelled like fresh laundry. And I thought, wow, because it's water vapor. And I thought, that's an amazing thing. That would be great instead of exhaust fumes. And they showed the safety aspect where they actually set a petroleum car on fire with the gas tank, and it went kablooey, as one expects. And then they had the hydrogen car, which, just as you said, a flame went out the back, and it was a controlled flame. So safety point, you have time to get out of that car if it's a controlled flame versus petroleum cars, which I just don't understand why people have that fear still. I guess it's just education, communication.
I think it's an education thing.
Which is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to educate people what's out there, the safety aspects, the fact that, progress is great. We need to move forward, and change is good. It's a little uncomfortable at times, but what you guys are doing is absolutely amazing. And I love the fact that you embrace all energy. You guys are looking at it all. You understand that some people prefer certain aspects of gasoline, plug-ins, hybrids, and hydrogen. And then it's also out of necessity, because there was a story of someone who had to get a hydrogen car because they were unable to convert their home electric system to do a plug-in. It was impossible. And he actually had an electric car. He had to return it and get the hydrogen car because it was the only option. So everyone, this is all everybody coming together. There's room for all technologies in this, in my opinion. And as you know, as we're coming to our closing, any words of wisdom for people out there who want to buy a hydrogen car? What to think about, what to anticipate?
So I definitely would, recommend going to our website and looking up the Hyundai Nexo. Unfortunately, if you don't live in California, then for the time being, you're out of luck. We are working hard to try and get Nexo available in the Northeast, right? As soon as infrastructure and stuff becomes available out there, then that is the next logical place for us. But there are things that you got to consider. I mean, you still have to be somewhat of an early adopter to drive a Nexo and any other fuel cell. And the only reason I say that is because, the stations aren't around every corner. And so if you live somewhere where there are no stations, it probably doesn't make sense for you. But if you live like in LA, there's plenty of stations. And there's no reason why you shouldn't consider it.
You just plan it. You just say, okay, this is how far away it is. I know, rather than riding on empty, which I know way too many people that will just kind of go to that last half mile and roll into the station on fumes. You just have to plan. Yeah. And I grew up in the Midwest where we had, winter storms. You learn to plan. You never had less than half a tank. It was just considered very dangerous.
And that's true for battery electric too. People have learned to plan that, you have a shorter range, at least for the first generation vehicles, right? And so
yes. I think it's amazing that you got 300 miles range on your electric. That is game changer for so many people.
I'm really proud of that car. It'll be coming out really soon, I believe.
And we will anticipate it. So thank you so much. And Derek, thank you. I know your sound is a little off. I don't know. Are you back?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. It was a great interview. Gail was spot on. That's fantastic. Thanks for conveying all those truths about our Hyundai Nexo. It's a fantastic vehicle.
Of course. Huge fan. I think what you guys are doing is wonderful and just helping the world, which is what we're all here to do. Absolutely. That's what we do. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Everyone have a wonderful day, and think hydrogen, think Hyundai.